Hi guys, it's Shei and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm continuing my read along for volume 4 of ErHa, aka White Husky and his white cat Shizun. Why did I fumble that? Anyway, I hope the audio is better today. I did try and fix it. I'm sorry I'm running a little bit late today, but we're gonna go until we're done with volume 4 today. So whether or not I'm running late, it doesn't matter. We're doing the last stretch of this today, so yeah, sorry about that. But also hi, I hope the audio is better today. I tried not to make it too loud, not loud, like I applied the same effect that I did on Tuesday, but I just turned it down a bit so it wouldn't get staticky or anything like that, and I hope it's made a good difference. But yeah, anyway, hi. Yeah, so I feel a little bit scatterbrained because everything just, I wasn't checking my time well enough today. So basically, how this works, if you're new here, hi, I'm Janae. I do read alongs for Dame mostly, and we're gonna do an hour, then a quick 10-minute break on the hour usually, and then we finish it off when we finish the novel. So, yay! Hi Janae, got my tea in my Notice Me Shizun mug. Ah, that's so cool. Okay, I'm ready. Okay, let's see what today has in store for us. I'm very nervous. Hi. Notice Me Shizun, I think, is from ErHa, as far as I'm aware. To be fair, it can be for either. Okay, so for anyone who wants to follow along with this, it is, hold on. At the top of page 342. And yeah, I think we can get started. I hope the audio is better for you today, Breezy. And let's get going. So we left off with Moran saying, I don't want any of that anymore, I only want you, and Chuaning not hearing that, unfortunately, because it's too quiet. So, I think, yeah. A few minutes passed, then he heard a loud creak from the bed on the other side of the wall, as if the person on it was very agitated and had rolled over angrily. He heard him say, hell, I'm not gonna curse, I'm sorry. Chuaning suddenly had a feeling, an animalistic sixth sense, that he was about to hear something. For an instant, all his hair stood on end. He thought he should cover his ears, but his fingers barely twitched. At a loss, he stared blankly at the underside of the quilt. A moment later, he heard it. Okay, sorry, I just have to address, things have been quiet up until the moment I sat down to do this read along. Now there's about 3 dogs barking outside the window, so if you can hear that, sorry about that. Moran was breathing heavily. There was a rhythm to it, heated and vigorous. Goosebumps rose along Chuaning's arms, the sounds melting his spine and made his back numb. Moran panting was so sensual and sinful, guttural noises that were stifled yet unbridled at once. These sounds left him with no ambiguity as to what Moran was doing. Chuaning closed his eyes. He felt like he couldn't breathe. His lips parted slightly, trembling. He remembered that erotic dream he had so many times before. In it, he'd seen Moran's entire body exposed, nothing left to the imagination. Shutting his eyes only made it easier to imagine what was happening outside the cocoon of his quilt. It was as if Moran was lying on his back right next to him, firm toned body stretched out, light dancing in those dark, narrow eyes. Moran's hand reached down and unfastened his trousers, and that potent length sprang up. Chuaning didn't dare think too deeply about what that massive thing would look like, how swollen and red it must be. If that's you not thinking deeply about it, okay, sure. Leaving it as a rough silhouette in his mind, Moran's hand worked over that lethal object, the jut of his throat rolling with every swallow. There was no telling of whom he thought as he stroked his own length feverishly, painfully. Okay, this is a lot. I'm gonna need another pillow, and then maybe just that one for sanctity as well. Who had it worse for the Shizun, Moran, or Ru Feng? I feel it's pretty evenly tied. You just refuse to stop thinking about the absolute unit. Yeah, I'm kind of leaning a little bit more to Moran as well. I don't know why. I think because I don't. I feel like I don't know the rest of the story yet with ErHa, so there's a lot more commitment that could be on the horizon that I don't even know about yet. As a low groan from the other side of the wall, husky and sensual, Chuaning's scalp went numb, those phoenix eyes hazy with lust in the darkness. He, too, could no longer bear it. After a long, torturous moment, the Yuheng elder's fair, slender hand finally reached down, trembling, took hold of his own burning arousal. That heft of it in his hand, hot and thick, brought both shame and pleasure. His head tilted back ever so slightly in a suppressed gasp. Under the cover of the quilt, he relinquished that exterior of cold virtue and drifted in the sounds of Moran's heavy breathing, allowing himself to drag down into the ocean of desires. He handled himself roughly and clumsily, even hurting himself several times, until he really couldn't take it anymore and abruptly flung off the quilt. He got on top of it, rubbing and grinding against its fabric, long, slender legs trembling uncontrollably, Phoenix eyes half-lidded behind loose strands of sweat-soaked hair, lips parted as he panted soundlessly. Perhaps being suddenly exposed to the open air made the noises clearer, or perhaps the heavy arousal made the noises blurrier, but he seemed to hear the sound of something thick. Oh no! Okay. He thought it was coming from Moran's side behind the wall, but when he looked down, he saw that his hardness was leaking at the tip, smearing across his hand and making those unbearably lurid sounds. You better best hope, for your sake and pride, that Moran doesn't hear any of this. And then we get an illustration. Goodness. Okay. Are we ready? Let's just read the page and then we can take a moment to absorb the artwork. I don't know. Chuaning felt his cheeks blaze with heat. He turned his head away from the wall so that it would feel like Moran was lying naked beside him, and they were stroking one another in mutual pleasure. Okay, that's a choice, Chuaning. Loftiness and reservations were left behind him in his lust-addled state, and all he knew was the harsh breathing from across the wall and the intoxicating friction beneath his body. His lack of experience left him defenseless against the carnal stimulation, and every inch of his skin felt aflame. Just as a well that stood dry for hundreds of years longed for water, Chuaning craved the touch of another warm body. As the pants from across the wall quickened, Chuaning felt his heart burn and his body grow pliant. His legs were on the verge of giving out. The sheets beneath him were already wet with fluid. Leeringly, he thought that this was all so ridiculous, that it really shouldn't, but he couldn't help it. It felt too good. In all his years, he'd never tried doing this. Didn't even know that anything could feel this pleasurable. When he'd gotten himself off in Yuliang village, he'd been tormented over breaking his abstinence for the first time. had loathed and been disgusted by himself. But this time, across the wall from the person he liked, listening to the stifled sounds of that person's heated breathing, he suddenly no longer found these carnal matters so ugly. He allowed himself to float in the ocean of desires, to feel pleasure rather than revulsion. A few erratic locks of not erratic. A few errant locks of hair fell over his teary, heavy-lidded eyes. His gaze lost focus, and for some reason a bizarre vision flashed before him. Or perhaps not a vision, but the strange, all-too-realistic dream he'd had in the past. The bedding in the dream had been red and gold, with an animal pelt spread on the sheets that he could practically smell. Okay. He'd been face down on that bed, as he was now, forehead sheening with sweat, lips slightly parted, hair similarly undone and loose over his eyes. Okay, before we continue with this very interesting scene, let us just appreciate the artwork here. That is quite something, I would say. Like, it is beautiful, but it is explicit as well, so yeah. Okay, I just want to check this whole scene, censorship, yeah. Honestly, China has some weird double standards, but thank goodness for that, I guess. Absolute units, oh my goodness, I can't. Yeah, it's something indeed. Okay. The candle had been left burning, and the man behind him drove into him fast and rough, with their legs tangled. You could clearly feel the man's body, muscles taut with pleasure. The sheets and blankets were in disarray. The man panted sensually and hoarsely as he thrust in and out, and Chuaning could hear him say, "What are you holding back for? Make some noise for me." Dream overlapped with reality. Chuaning gritted his teeth and tilted his face away, refusing to make a sound even as the heat built low in his belly and his need grew until it was nearly unbearable. He closed his eyes, and his hand below moved yet more roughly. He closed his eyes, but he couldn't unsee those erotic dreams. The man thrust in a few more times, then cursed under his breath and pulled out. He forced Chuaning to turn over, and in the candlelight Chuaning saw a handsome, lust-filled face, Moran's face. Seeing Moran so clearly in the dream only intensified Chuaning's arousal and torment. He shook his head in shame, trying to free himself from the vision, but it was useless. He heard Moran's panting across the wall, low and throaty, just like in the cruel yet tender man in those dreams. Despicably, Chuaning recalled further details of that dream. Moran, flipping him over and pressing his still wet length to Chuaning's entrance, which was clenching down spasmodically, uncontrollably, from such thorough use. His massive head rubbed against the opening, dipping in enough to tease but no further. Within the inn, Chuaning's other hand fisted tightly in the sheets. Shameful. It was too shameful. How could he possibly dream something like that? He'd never looked at any of those things. So how could he dream so vividly of such affairs, as if his body really had experienced such fervent, yet frenzied, ugly, yet intimate encounters? Could this be the bestial nature carved into the bones of every human? No, unfortunately, it's your past life timeline coming back to haunt you. In the dream, Moran's eyes shone, his expression sinister and avaricious. Sorry, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Holding out on me, you really think biting through your lip to keep quiet will save your purity? I've slept with you so many times. What's the point in struggling? You're the one who willingly let me sleep with you. You're the one who willingly submitted to me. Stop, Chuaning murmured. both in the dream and in reality. So what if you're noble and virtuous? You were still dirtied by me in the end. Didn't you take me into your mouth and suck me off? Didn't you spread your legs and let me sleep with you? Wasn't what leaked out from between your legs my gift to you? Oh. Ugh. Sorry. Okay, continuing. We soldier on. Pure, don't be stupid. That word has never applied to you since the day I bedded you. Stop talking. Pure no longer. Pride ripped apart like his robes. You should see what you look like down here. Moran's gaze dragged downward, like a dagger eviscerating the man beneath him, until his eyes landed on that quivering clenched hole still sticky from their earlier union. Thanks for that description. Traces of blood visible amid the other fluids. His eyes darkened and the juts of his throat popped as he swallowed. Then he saw under his breath and took his engorged cock into his hand. He pushed slowly into the twitching entrance, stretching it ruthlessly open, inch by quivering inch. It was strange, but lost in his memories of that dream, Chuaning felt as if he really could feel something hard some hard stuff of flesh tearing him apart, filling him. This is oddly painful. Like, I know it's not really happening, but it's still painful. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Moran sank all the way in, so deep he was pressed tightly against Chuaning's entrance, as though he wanted to shove. I'm not gonna read that. I don't know why I can't read that with a straight face. I don't know why that is the limit. Anyway, his massive length pulled Chuaning to his limits, pulsing inside him, and he was sure he couldn't take one bit more of this violation. Was it in the dream or reality? A moan finally escaped from his throat, jolting Chuaning out of his trance. The mirage dissipated in an instant, fading like mist. The last thing he saw was Moran driving into him, fast and rough, the two of them going at it frantically atop the bed as he heard Moran say between heavy breaths, voice raw and heated, "If you were a woman, I would have knocked you up long ago. The way I sleep with you like this every day. Huh. Our child would be quite the abomination, don't you think?" Look, I know we have a reformed Moran here in the present, and I really adore him, but damn, he was not the best kind of person in his past. Um, yeah, it's not. I'm not enjoying that at all. Shame, arousal, bestial desire, human nature. Inside the inn, Chuaning turned over, trying to shake himself free of the filthy scene in his mind. He felt aggrieved, and the rims of his eyes were tinged with red. Why was this happening? He never used to have dreams like these. He'd never looked at anything he shouldn't. He'd never even seen a pornographic drawing. So why should he have such ridiculous, wanton dreams? What would he do if anyone were to find out? The memories of that dream receded, but the bed in the other room suddenly began to rock. Oh my goodness, Moran, calm yourself. Moran had been working over himself for quite a while before Chuaning had even begun. The heat had been building this whole time, and he was so close to the edge. Moran couldn't help but buck his hips, thrusting upwards. He'd gone without for so long that when he came, it was a low, guttural roar. My word, dude, like, there is no secrecy to be had. How are you gonna face Chuaning in the morning? I wonder. Oh, wait, I forget. He thinks Chuaning is sleeping, but do you really think Chuaning would sleep through that even if he were actually asleep? Muffled sound sent heat spiraling down Chuaning's spine. Eyes teary and red-rimmed, he stroked himself roughly and followed suit soon enough, coming all over the bedding. He'd never experienced such an intense climax, and he couldn't help the low shout that tore itself from his throat as he came gasping. Wait, he shouted? That is okay. That is, okay. His vision blurred with his release. Trenning couldn't understand how he'd managed to fall into the sticky, messy love, unable to summon any strength. It was all he could do to lie there, eyes unfocused as he panted quietly. He'd rejected carnal desires, but he'd willingly fallen in love. And when desire and love wove together, passions of the flesh seemed less unacceptable. So his response this time was different from the frustration and despair he'd felt in Yuliang village. The shame was still there, but it was washed away by the tender feelings in his heart, drowned by pleasure and arousal. Chuaning suddenly wanted nothing more than for that wooden wall between them to vanish. He wanted Moran, sweat-soaked and panting as he was, to reach over and press his hot, heavy chest against his back, to kiss her shoulder and mouth along his neck. As he lay there limply, staring off into space, Chuaning thought that if only this were so, then everything would be perfect. He would be content. Yeah, sure, drive a dagger into my heart, why don't you? Okay, Moran, just wake up everyone who. Why don't you? Yeah, very much so. Moran rose early the next day. He knew that this was Ling Yi, and Chuaning wouldn't like the food here. The inn didn't offer much in the way of mild dishes, so he set off for the western market and bought some ingredients, intending to borrow the inn kitchen to personally cook a few things for his Shizun. There were some men who pulled out all the stops to woo someone, who might cook a full banquet for breakfast, but who would give up and walk away at the first sign of their affection. I'm assuming it wasn't returned. Might not be returned. There were so many beauties in the world. Why waste time on someone they had no chance with? Moran wasn't like that. He'd spent 2 lifetimes chasing after Shei. He finally understood his own feelings, and he also understood that, in this lifetime, he and Chuaning would never be more than master and disciple. Even so, he wanted to care for Chuaning every day. To be perfectly aware that something was impossible, but to go ahead and do it anyway. In this, Moran had never changed, in life or in death. Gongzi, out shopping so early? Check out my fresh radishes, why not buy some? Gongzi, I have all sorts of jewelry here, bracelets, necklaces, hairpins, and accessories, you name it. They're all finely made. Come look, come see, all kinds of spiritual stones and weapons, come. Moran had only planned to get some groceries, but as he passed a general store with his basket full of vegetables, he saw a row of pretty little trinkets laid out on a stand. One in particular caught his eye, and he found himself wandering over before he knew it. Another man stood near the stand, the hood okay, he's immediately suspicious. The hood of his cloak pulled up as he looked over the glittering goods on display. The man lifted a hand, revealing smooth and lovely bone-pale fingers beneath loose black sleeves. How do we know this is a man, but okay. It was these delicate fingers that drew Moran's attention. Based on the person's build, he'd taken them for a man, but the slenderness of that hand made him think they might be a woman instead. Curiosity drove him to try for a better look at the face, but it was shrouded with a veil of black silk. Only a pair of cold eyes were visible, obscured by the shadow of the cloak's voluminous hood. Their eyes met. Out of habit, Moran smiled. The cloaked person swiftly retracted their hand, which had been reaching for a spiritual stone on the stand. From the corner of his eye, Moran caught a glimpse of the ring on the pale thumb. It was patterned with a silver serpent covered in intricate scales. So for a weird moment, I was like, Yong, but that's just because he's constantly on my mind. I'm wondering where he is. He felt he'd seen the pattern somewhere before, but just as he went to take a closer look, the person tucked their hand back into their sleeves. They cast Moran an indifferent glance, then turned and left without a word. What a weirdo, Moran muttered. Then again, Ru Feng's young master was getting married, and wedding invitations had been sent out en masse. All sorts of peculiar people had been gathering in Nini of late, so it wasn't so strange to see someone cloaked from head to toe on the streets. The wind chimes hanging from the store's back door rang, and the curtain rose and fell as the shop mistress came out. Moran mentally discarded the matter of the black-robed person and pointed at an enchanted item on display. Smiling, he asked, "How much for this one?" The nerves I'm feeling. I'm stressed. Okay, hold on. Let me just get some tea. Let's see if anyone else is disturbed by Moran who did these things. Is the Moran we're following now? The training didn't live through them, but more. I mean, yeah. I don't think anyone is disconnecting the two. I think the fact that we followed him through the redemption arc and that we now know how much he also hates how he used to be makes it easier to accept and move past it. Yeah. He did terrible things, but I think his actions since then are meant to put him back into the grey rather than pure evil. Okay, yeah, like, for me with Moran, I think it's just one of those things where you know that he's always going to remain a morally great character because of his past, and opting into reading the series just kind of means that you have to accept that, and if you're not willing to accept that, that's fine, but then I'd be surprised if you would be willing to continue with the series, because I mean, if you read these kinds of scenes and you don't like Moran in the redemption version, and I'm not saying anyone here specifically, I'm just talking in a general sense, but if you don't like Moran as he is now redeemed, it'd be very hard to like commit to 11, it is 11 volumes, right? 11 volumes where you know potentially they're gonna end up together. Like that, damn, that just feels like a very big commitment. But I think for me personally, because Meat Bun plays open cards with us from the start, and he's like, you know, Moran is pretty damn terrible. You know what you're getting yourself into, and I think she did a good job with the redemption, as good as you can do under the circumstances. Okay, sorry, I am done philosophizing. Let us continue. I so badly, I don't know if anyone saw it, but I did a writing video about MXTX, and I so badly want to do one about Meat Bun's writing as well, but I haven't read enough of her stories to know what her writing is like yet. Like, obviously, I love what I've seen from READALONG so far, but READALONG isn't her entire um, novel base. I don't know what you call it. Anyway, okay, let me stop talking. Chapter 152. Shizun, look, it's Mei Han Xue. Okay. The shopkeeper was preparing to open for the day and had just released the door bolt with a yawn and a languid stretch. Her bleary eyes beheld the tall, handsome stranger standing at the entrance to her store, bathed in the light of the morning's brilliant sun. An individual of such elevated bearing, tall and straight as a mighty pine, ought to be carrying a blade and walking coolly through the city streets, heedless of all around him. But this dashing man was smiling brightly, all soft dimples and gentle, thick eyelashes. In his arms was a bamboo basket filled not with spiritual stones or cultivation scrolls, but fresh fruits and vegetables. Vibrant red apples, plump white radishes, and verdant green saltus, leaves dew-laden as they peeked over the rim. Light danced off the crystalline droplets of the reflected onto his handsome face. The shopkeeper froze mid-yawn as she stared blankly at this vision of tender masculinity standing before her. She blinked, but stood dazzled for some moments. "Ma'am?" "Yes, hello, what would you like?" These. Moran picked up a pair of pale red crystal pendants. "How much?" "Pale red crystal pendants. Like these ones?" "No, I'm not sure." Gongsa has fine taste. These pendants are made using top-grade dragon blood crystals and crafted by artisans at Kunlun Palace. The materials may not be the most precious, but the pendants themselves are quite special. The red color of dragon blood crystals, as I'm sure you know, become more vibrant as the wearer's body temperature rises. Okay? The keeper paused to smile before continuing. Sun Shenjun picked out a pair. One must be for your dual cultivation partner. Ayo, I wonder what lady was so lucky as to claim your affection. Definitely get these. I guarantee you won't regret it. It'll certainly spice things up for you both wearing one while dual cultivating. Interesting that that's where her mind went, and also like, how is that spicing things up? But okay. Sorry, I just realized that my Discord is still open and the sound is on. Let me just quickly fix that. Okay. Hmm. Moran had been drawn to the pendants because dragon blood crystals had a warming property excellent for people predisposition to catching colds. Oh, that is quite sweet. Okay. Such a thing would be perfect for Chuaning during the winter, but his heart skipped a beat at the shopkeeper's words. He imagined how Chuaning would look, dazed by pleasure with that pendant swinging from his neck, glowing scarlet from the heat of its wearer's body, red as a bead of blood quivering at the tip of a blade. He cleared his throat. "I'll take the pair. Please wrap them up for me." In order to not arouse Chuaning's suspicion, Moran bought gifts for Yong and Madame Wang as well. When he returned to the inn, he put down his bundles and withdrew the small paper packets holding the dragon blood crystals from inside his sleeve. The droplet-shaped pendants had already turned crimson from the heat of his body. He picked one to leave in the package and hung the other around his neck. Then he straightened his collar, making sure the pendant was invisible, and rewrapped the other. Not couple pendants. Why am I'm just... Look, we're talking tropes I love. Couple items that are like subtle couple items. Definite sucker for it. As he patted his lapels, he noticed his heart was beating a little fast. After all the preposterous things he'd done in his past life, he was surprised to find himself flustered over a small secret hidden under his clothes. "For me?" Over breakfast, Shumeng held the sword tassel Moran had given him, looking like he'd seen a ghost. "What are you giving me this for? Trying to make up for yesterday?" Unaware that Chuaning had been awake and overheard last night's exchange, Moran remained perfectly calm, not batting an eyelid. The same could not be said for Chuaning. He grabbed his cup and gulped down a few mouthfuls of cold tea in an effort to cover his unease, while he schooled his expression into one of neutrality. Moran replied with a grin. "What do you mean? You're the one who started it. I grabbed the tassel because it looked nice and I thought you'd like it. He paused, then added, we rarely travel together like this, so of course I gotta buy some souvenirs. I got something for Shizun, uncle and aunts as well. Just some trinkets, nothing expensive. Us too? Madame Wong seemed quite surprised. I got aunt an agarwood cosmetic box and a pendant for uncle's fan. Moran handed over their gifts as he spoke. And this is for Shizun. He handed Chuaning the dragon blood crystal pendant. Chuaning eyed the red crystal. What is it? A pendant. Moran's palm felt hot with sweat. Dragon blood crystals are products of Linyi and have warming properties, so I got one for Shizun to keep warm. The crystal was inexpensive but useful, so Chuaning accepted it. Thanks. Yeah, I kind of get the idea, and I think Moran might have even mentioned it at some point, that Chuaning would probably not have accepted the gift if it was expensive. Don't mention it. When Shizun put it on, Chuaning glanced over at Moran but did not see through his disciple's selfish, intimate motive. He put it around his neck without a second thought. The pale red crystal glistened brilliantly. Shimon, watching all this, piped up. That looks nice. Better than my tassel. Where'd you get it? I want to buy myself one too. They don't have any left. Moran replied. They only had one in stock. I couldn't even get one for myself. He lied like a liar. Oh my goodness. Disappointed, Shimon picked up his sword tassel and looked it over, then turned to look at Chuaning's pendant once more, mumbling, No way. This stuff's supposed to be common in Linyi. I'm gonna ask Nan Gongse when we get to Ru Feng sect. I bet he has a whole mountain of it. Moran paid him no mind. He was too busy watching Chuaning. He was anti. Chuaning hadn't tucked the pendant inside his clothes next to his skin, but left it hanging on the outside instead. After biting his tongue for a while, he said, Shizun, the pendant isn't meant to be worn over your clothes. You have to put it inside. He leaned over to tuck the pendant in for Chuaning, but he moved too close, too fast, the heat of his breath burning Chuaning's ear, and he was unceremoniously shoved away. Oh, goodness. Chuaning's features were cold and stern, lashes lowering over downcast eyes, but Moran had gotten a close look this time. Chuaning's ears were pink as a high-tongue blossom, pitiful and adorable. Moran wanted to kiss one, to put that trembling petal between his lips and suck. Oh my goodness! Oh my word, okay. But he was also somewhat surprised. Why was Chuaning blushing? He hadn't done anything inappropriate. Was arranging the pendant for him such a big deal? As he mulled it over, he suddenly remembered the words he'd just spoken. You have to put it inside. Moran momentarily froze, and his face turned red as well. If not for his tanned complexion, he'd probably have been even redder than Chuaning. He swore he hadn't meant for anything suggestive when he said that. The astonishment set in. If even his mind hadn't gone to the gutter, then how had Chuaning, with all his propriety? No matter how he thought about it, he couldn't figure it out. Even when Chuaning, ears pink and face glum, stuffed the pendant into his clothing without a word, Moran was still none the wiser. The wooden wall, no thicker than the width of a few fingers, had balked Tai Shenjun from so much the night before. He'd missed the ripening of the first high-tongue fruit of spring, missed a Chuaning made of flesh and blood, who'd stumbled into the muddy swamp of carnal desire. He knew nothing of what had happened on the bed on the other side of the wall. He didn't know that this morning's Chuaning was still caught in yesterday's mire, heart-throbbing with his love-born desire, and filled with shame because of it, overly sensitive because of it, still haunted by his dream and the filthy words contained therein, still desperate to suppress evidence of that vision. Chuaning had uncharacteristically read dirty thoughts into such a simple sentence. Chuaning looked up and shot Moran a quick glance. His chest felt a little hot. He must still have an excess of internal heat from yesterday. He reached for the handle of the teapot, only to be beaten to it by Moran. Don't drink so much cold tea, it's bad for your stomach. Chuaning said nothing, but stared at him with his hand outstretched, indicating that he'd like the cold tea anyway, thank you. I'll get you a cup of hot tea instead. There's no need. But Moran had already gone to find the shopkeeper, returning after a few minutes with a pot of fresh boiled tea, which he poured into a cup for Chuaning. Here you go, Shizun. He's right, Yong. You should drink your tea hot. Cold tea really isn't good for your health, said Yong. Chuaning had no choice but to accept the steaming cup of tea. He blew on it a little, then set it down without taking a sip. His insides were hot enough. Any warmer, and he feared that last layer of thin ice in his gaze would melt and allow his unrestrained, lustful feelings to overflow. He feared that, if their eyes were to meet, there would be no way to hide his embarrassing thoughts. And if that were to happen, how could he, the bidal immortal, face anyone ever again? As they finished breakfast and got ready to leave, a new group came in. At their head was a man wearing a thick sky blue cloak with a scrollwork pattern, his face hidden under the hood, inconspicuous within the group. As he set foot inside the inn and saw Yong, however, he broke away from his party and came over to make a formal salute. Greetings, Uncle Shei. Who? The man pushed his hood back. Shimeng let out a small sound of surprise and took a big step back. Yong laughed. Ah, if it isn't Han Shei. And we get the title. I'm really curious though, like, trying to think where we're gonna end off this volume. Like, we're relatively close to the end and I don't know where this is going. I've only read up until book 5 in English, so much to go. I have unfortunately been spoiled about a couple of points though. Cat Shizun likes the shiny thing. I love that. Oh my goodness. Meihan Shei lifted his face. His skin was fair, and with his high nose bridge and defined brows framing deep-set eyes, he possessed an exotic handsomeness that set him apart from the rest. His skin glowed even in the dimly lit space. He had been raised in the frigid lands of Kunlun, and his features carried the chill of frost and snow, giving him an air of cool detachment and keen intelligence. Simply put, based on looks and mannerisms alone, no one would believe that this was the infamous philanderer Meihan Shei. There were some matters to take care of back at the sect, so I've only just arrived at Linyi. I didn't expect to see Uncle Shei here. Meihan Shei's looks were so naturally cold that his eyes were frosty even as he smiled politely, and his gestures of respect had a coolness to them. So I came over to greet Uncle and Aunt. Very good, very good. If only Mingar had your manners. Damn, what a way to throw your own child under the bus in front of him. Damn. Shimeng was less than pleased to hear this. He glared daggers at Meihan Shei from where he stood at the back, the venom in his gaze only growing. This damnable Meihan Shei. Shimeng thought to himself, so frickin' two-faced. The sleazy scoundrel who do... The sleazy scoundrel would do anything and anyone, male or female, dead or alive. He had even tried to grope Shimeng back at Peach Blossom Springs. Oh goodness, okay. But look at him now, acting prim and proper like some enlightened monk in front of his elders. What a poser. Meihan Shei didn't glance even once at his childhood playmate. His gaze remained fixed, and his lips barely moved as he spoke, the very image of propriety. Uncle jests. Shugongzi is the darling of the heavens and the winner of the spiritual mountain competition. I'm sure he is outstanding in other respects. That's right, Dad. I beat this guy before, you know. Mingar. Embarrassed, Madame Wang tugged at Shimeng's sleeve. The irascible little phoenix reluctantly subsided, though he continued to mutter under his breath, puffing fire from his nostrils. Mei Henshu asked, "Is Uncle heading up to Ru Feng sect?" "Well, it's about time. There's no harm getting there a little early, if nothing else. Nanggong Liu has an abundance of rooms to spare. Didn't he say something about turning the whole city into guest lodgings for the months before and after the wedding?" Yong said with a laugh. "We're gonna head over first. That way the youngsters can spend some time getting to know each other too." At that he glanced over at Shimeng, his matchmaking intentions none too subtle. Oh goodness. I'm intrigued to see if Shimeng does end up with someone, because obviously in the previous lifetime he was too, or at least it seemed like he was too tormented by everything surrounding Tashi and Jin to have married. But that might just be because it didn't come up at that point, I'm not sure. Shimeng abruptly went quiet. Is Hanshu not going straight to Ru Feng sect? "I have some errands to run for the sect master, and I need to purchase a considerable number of spiritual stones, so I'll be staying in Dai City for a few more days. It won't be too late to arrive the day before the wedding." So was it him in the black cloak? Shimeng muttered under his breath, "Yeah, right. You're just afraid of arriving early and getting beaten like a dog by all the girls from every sect whose heart you've played with." "Oh, what was that, Mum?" Moran, who had been listening, teased. "Something about a dog?" Shimeng hoofed and crossed his arms. "Nothing. I was just reciting cultivation scripture." "Huh, sure. The may be gone. The may be gone scripture." Oh, goodness. "You shut up." The sound of their bickering, at the sound of their bickering, Mehanshu finally deigned to glance over. The eyes met and Shimon paused. Something was off about Mehanshu. He was acting completely weird. When last they'd met, it had been at Peach Blossom Springs, and the sleazy playboy had been shooting seductive glances in every direction. His eyes had seemed like they'd smiled, even when angry, but the eyes of the person in front of Shimeng now had not even the slightest inclination towards flirtation, much less any seductive glances to shoot. His gaze was ice-cold, logical, and admirably restrained. These eyes seemed like they'd be angry even when smiling. Okay, so he's the next potential candidate for the fake Gochen. Shimeng blinked, rooted in place as they recalled how Mei and Shi had led the disciples of Taixia Palace in battle at the Heavenly Rift. The way he had acted so serious in front of everyone. He couldn't help the flash of anger that burned through him. How was this guy so good at pretending? How did he fake so well? This duplicitous beast, the scum in gentleman's clothing. "Hey, Mingar, where are you going?" "It's too stuffy in here. I'll wait outside. Don't come out till you're done chatting." With this, Shimeng strode towards the door, flipping the curtain, and left in a huff. The poor darling of the heavens was far too vexed. He really didn't get it. The whole damn room had that sleazy stink. How could no one else tell? Infuriating. This could either be like some big problem or the start of another romance. Who knows? Yes, that is. I am side eyeing every single character ever. Okay, we have 4 minutes till the hour, but we are at the end of a chapter, so I think I'm gonna take my 10-minute break now, and then we'll be back at 6 past for the next stretch until we finish. So yeah, I'm terrified. But I'll see you guys there. Okay, we are back. We quickly open up here again. Wow, okay, you guys have wait, Meatbun spoils the novel in her own notes? Why would you do that? But yeah, I'm glad I didn't see any of that. MXCX did that too for TJCF. I was so mad while she told us about this one thing that, according to her, was already very obvious and was as if we hadn't caught onto it. Okay, so yeah, I mean, my friend and I actually had an interesting discussion about I think it was yeah, one of Brandon Sanderson's novels. I haven't read any of them, so no spoilers. But he was talking about how one of the beta readers for one of Brandon Sanderson's novels, or it might have been one of the Wheel of Time ones that Brandon Sanderson had wrote, but how the beta reader was like, oh, this is super obvious, you can't make it this obvious. And then it, like, after 10 years, Brandon Sanderson was like, oh, this thing is actually canon, and no one had picked up on it. So that beta reader was just super perceptive, apparently. But it is interesting what authors think is obvious when maybe it's not, or think it isn't obvious and then it actually is. Um, Thank you also for the welcome back. Okay, I think we can get started again. We are gonna probably go a little bit over time. I hope that's okay. But we should be relatively on time. So, like, maybe just 10 minutes past the hour. And let's go. Chapter 153. Shizun's most hated sect leader. Ooh, okay. Mad as Shimeng might be, the group from Session Peak still needed to be on their way. After bidding farewell to Meihan Shi, they left Dai City, heading north and traveling for an hour until they arrived at last at the farmost sect in the world, Linyi Ru Feng sect. Ru Feng sect, as its name implied, was situated within Linyi. Within this vast city were 72 manors of varying sizes built in a continuous were 72 manors of varying sizes built in a continuous stretch. Each manor oversaw its own massive estate, so large that it would take an hour to travel across it on horseback. In fact, each of these manors were considered a city in its own right. The 72 cities of Ru Feng sect each had their own duties and clear-cut rankings. It was worlds apart from the hodgepodge melting pot that was Session Peak. The two were in different leagues. Even Shimeng, who despised the people of the upper cultivation realm, couldn't help his astonishment as he stood at the entrance to the cities. Ru Feng sect was said to be the epitome of the elite, privileged and upper class. It seemed truer words had never been spoken. The city they'd arrived in was the main city, which was also the largest metropolis within Ru Feng sect. Its buildings, white-walled with black-tiled roofs, extended towards the skies, and the gates on the cardinal walls of the city were each flanked by towering, lofty watchtowers on each side. The main city gate was painted red and adorned with gold, and its road was at least 50 feet wide, a grand throughway that stretched into the distance, and which was paved with refinement stones. With this, one could accumulate spiritual power by simply standing on the road. Damn, that's a cool thing. Although the effect of each individual rock was minimal, enough grains of sand would amass it into a tower. Each one of these rocks cost over 1,000 gold. Can you imagine having that amount of money to just throw around, apparently? Must be nice being rich, Yong marveled. Madame Wong chuckled. If you had the money, would you also pave a Chi refinement road for Shizun Peak? Nah, I would pave a public square in every village in the lower cultivation realm. And this is why we love him. Oh my goodness. These rocks are full of spiritual power and can ward off minor ghosts and monsters. If every village had a square like this, its people would have a safe place to shelter during an attack till our disciples could get to them. Yeah, no, it's confirmed. I very much love Shizhen Yong. Shizhen Yong made some tallies on his fingers, then shook his head. Too bad we can't afford it. Surgeon Peak, Shimong sighed along, is a little poor. Mm-hmm. Shizhen Yong nodded weightily. We're all cultivation sects, yet Ru Feng sect is so rich. At this point, Chuaning, who had kept silence until now, spoke up. Sect leader, do you know how much Ru Feng sect charges to send our regular disciples for an exorcism? I've never asked. How much? Chuaning raised 4 fingers. 400 silver? Shizhen Yong's eyes grew wide. So much? 4,000 gold. Excuse you? Let me get this straight. I shouldn't be this offended. But let me get this straight. So, like, Ru Feng sect dispatches Surgeon Peak, then charges people for Surgeon Peak going to help them. And let me guess, Surgeon Peak doesn't get a cut of anything. Is that what they just told us? I really hope not. I hope I misread that. Shizhen gaped, speechless. The upper cultivation realm is full of wealthy merchants, so money is easy to come by. How can you compete with them when you only charge 80 silver? Okay, so I did misunderstand. Thank frickin' goodness. 80 silver per request, not to mention the requests for which you don't accept payment at all. Despite his blunt words, Chuaning's eyes were gentle. Come, let us enter the city. There was an accepted etiquette for prominent sects to receive guests, and the reception committee for Ru Feng sect had been waiting at the city gates for the past few days. Though they greeted all entrants with welcoming smiles, they were well aware of the statuses and reputations of each arriving party. For rogue travellers and small-time cultivators, the reception committee would give them a tour of the city, then guide them to their assigned rooms. Minor sects would be received directly by the warden, who was in charge of such things. When it came to Surgeon Peak, which had recently risen to become one of the 10 great sects, Ru Feng sect's reception committee didn't bother posturing. They were invited directly into the reception room to await the arrival of the Ru Feng sect's leader, Nanggong Liu, who would come to personally greet them as esteemed guests just as soon as he'd wrapped up his business. But also, okay, this is a bit random, but the fact that we get such a clear picture of the kind of person that Shizhen Yong is, you understand why Chuaning works for, like, I know that's not the technical way to put it, but works for Shizhen Yong, because they kind of share the same value system, and I can see why Chuaning would deeply respect Shizhen Yong. Um, They're probably the best when you read the whole thing for the first time and read them as you finish the chapters. Yeah. Um, Once you not be tormented by disturbed spirits, that's 10 years of your salary, please. Thanks. I think I'll take the torment, it's fine. Okay. The air was thick with the fragrance of the abrigrus incense. The carpets on the floor so plush their feet sank in deep, and the reception room was abloom with tender, stunning camellias. One plant with 8 blooms, each of different colour, was called 80 Mortals Crossing the Sea. Another, bearing white petals with flecks of red, was called a Blushing Maiden Clad in White. Yet another, with fine red veins spread across its petals and leaves, was called Delicate Beauty Reclining. Yong knew nothing of such things, but Man Wang was aware that every single plant here was a cultivar of the highest quality. Of course it is, because these people have money, so much money. Yep, they both care for the common people. Yeah. Shimon was as clueless as his dad. He spotted a charming camellia with a pair of black dots on its soft petals, and intrigued, he reached out to touch it. Don't, Chuaning said. Why? Chuaning only shook his head, but on one side and answered, Precious treasures are a delight to the eyes. A flower like this sells for tens of thousands of gold. Aghast, Shimon pulled his hand back, then dejectedly sat down in the plump-cushioned Tashi chair. He thought about the ranking book he'd found at the bookstore, and how furious he'd been when the list of the 100 richest tiers had excluded him. Now he realized the book hadn't lied. It was like his forehead was stamped with one giant gloomy word. Poor. I mean, if he's poor, what the hell are we? That reminded him. Where had that book gone to? He hadn't had the chance to finish flipping through it before it was lost. Before long, a curtain of red coral and fresh water pearls clacked as 2 elegant and dignified lady cultivators from Ru Feng sect stepped in, their snow silk celestial robes aflutter. One stood to the left and one to the right as they raised the beaded curtain. They lowered their eyes and curtsied, announcing in voices songbird sweet, The esteemed sect leader has arrived. A man in his 40s strode in with a broad smile. He had a plain, somewhat bookish face. What's a bookish face? Oh my goodness, okay. The kind easily forgotten in a crowd. Okay, fair enough. I kind of get where you're going with this. Beyond the fact that his skin was exceptionally fair, his appearance was unremarkable. The instant he opened his mouth, however, Moran almost spat out the tea he had been drinking. Sect leader Shei. This humble one has been gazing at the stars, gazing at the moon, waiting for the moment your esteemed selves would finally call on Ru Feng sect. Look at you, dashing and spirited, mighty and magnificent, a hero of the world, matched by no man. Excellent, fantastic, your mere presence illuminates my humble abode. Good. Wow. This man would give Wing Kushing a run for his money. Shimeng and Moran looked on, speechless. Although he was the leader of the foremost sect in the world, and although he was addressing the leader of the one ranked bottommost among the 10 great sects, here was Nanggong Liu of how do I pronounce that? Obsequious and effusive, crying out, good, thrice in a row, each more fervent than the last. His liberal praise naturally pleased Yong a great deal. I'm sorry, I would not be happy about that. It doesn't sound sincere, but okay, go for it, Yong. No, sect leader Nanggong is too gracious, he beamed back. This humble one is not merely being polite. From the bottom of my heart, I am truly envious of sect leader Shei. The sect leader is a hero of our times, awe-inspiring, worthy of admiration. Look at this humble one. I've become so lazy and flabby in my old age. I surely cannot compare. I mean, he's not wrong. Yong is great, but this sounds terrible. Nangong Liu was so not eccentric, ecstatically warm that the peacock Yong's tail feathers began to spread despite his best efforts. Oh no, ha. Sect leader Nangong Liu, sorry. You're too generous. Moran had never crossed paths with Nangong Liu in his past life. When Moran had come to eradicate Ru Feng's sect, the sect leader had fled. Moran cared nothing for such small fish and hadn't bothered to check if the man had died in the crossfire or managed to escape with his life and scraped out some further existence under a new name. Thus, this was the first time he'd ever been in the same room as Nangong Liu, and he found him distasteful just from his tone. He muttered under his breath, who knew the sect leader of the #1 sect in the world had such a silver tongue? Yeah, and the fact that he was described as plain and not to be distinguished in a crowd is making my already fried nerves more nervous. Okay. Shimeng heard him and, in agreement with his cousin for once, whispered back, "You're right, that's what you call a real silver tongue." His words are so flowery, I can barely smell those expensive blooms over the cloying sweetness. Satisfied with his praise of the elder, Nangong Liu moved on to the offspring. Ayo, is this not the darling of the heavens, little Shu Gongzi? Shimeng might have been the dirt poor young master, but he was not lacking in spirit. He cupped his hands without much enthusiasm. Sect leader Nangong. Truly a gallant youth, handsome, incredible. Look at this nose, those eyes, my, the spirit. Truly like father, like son. Shimeng was struck speechless. Nangong Liu turned back to Yong. Shizun, this humble one is ever so envious of you. What house in the world has a coin with half the metal of your boy? I must say, there are so many outstanding young people in the vast cultivation world, but vanishing few who can match this son of yours. Shimeng had held out at first, determined to detest him, but Nangong Liu was completely oblivious to his cool attitude, catapulting to much enthusiastic, effusive praise as he at him that it knocked the poor young master Shu right off his feet and sent him reeling until he eventually cracked a small smile. When he once more turned to whisper at Moran, he said, "The sect leader Nangong might be exaggerating a bit, but he speaks the truth." Oh my word, I can't. What truth? Moran looked sidelong at him in amusement. That there's a few who can match you? What? I'm telling you, at the spiritual mountain competition, that was just one competition. Many of the row cultivators didn't participate. Did you really think the world's greatest would be found in that tiny scuffle of a competition? Moran, that was totally uncalled for. Damn. Shimeng flushed and was silent for a long moment before eventually grumbling indignantly, "Forget it, I know you're just jealous." Were he young, Moran would have kept teasing him, yet now that the words were on his tongue, he felt there was no point in arguing with Shimeng and that competitive, narcissistic personality of his. So he nodded with a grin. Fine, I was jealous. You're the best." However, when Moran glanced back at Nangong Liu, the smile in his eyes faded completely. Many different types of villains walked this earth. Some were heinously depraved, their sins so grievous that all the world would clamour for their execution. Then there were those who were remarkable in another way, with their silver tongues and peerless talent for bootlicking. They could be rotten to the core and still not garner public scorn. In Moran's previous life, he was the former, yet the ones he despised most were none were not those righteous few who'd fought against him. He didn't hate Mei Han Shi, he didn't hate Shu Meng, he didn't hate Ye Wangxi, and in the case of the last he even admired and pitied him. The one he despised most were those like Nanggong Liu, an ass-kisser who would kneel on the ground and lick another's hemorrhoids so long as there was something in it for him. A hemorrhoid... I don't want to say that, that's... ugh. A hemorrhoid sucker, that is what I don't want to say, but there we go. Okay, I said it, let's move along. Chuaning had been standing by the window since Nanggong Liu's entrance, looking out at the organized row of houses and splendid sights of Ru Feng sect. The winds were brisk at this altitude, and the soft scented curtains that hung in the window drifted gently, obscuring Chuaning's figure in their gauzy haze. The fervent friendliness of Nanggong Liu's face froze momentarily, but he quickly recovered and headed towards the window. Chu Zongshi. Chuaning did not turn. His expression was indifferent as he said, Sect Leader Nanggong, surely we know each other well enough that there's no need for introductions. Caught on the easterly breeze, the silk curtains, as soft as spring waters, brushed persistently against Chuaning's face. Irritated, he raised a hand to block the offending curtain, then said mildly, You can disperse with the pleasantries. Nanggong Liu smiled. This humble one only wants to greet Chu Zongshi, since it has been long since we last met. Zongshi, must we be so distant? I came for Nanggong's sake. Chuaning still did not turn his head. Not for yours. So I will be delighted to see you. Even if you didn't take him as your disciple, you were his first teacher after all. After you left, he often told me how he missed you. Chuaning made no reply. Encouraged by the lack of pushback, Nanggong Liu continued, Zongshi, your impassioned and righteous actions at Butterfly Town during the events of the Heavenly Rift were inspirational. The Master Huazhu added your return to the living world. The Master Huazhu aided your return to the living world. I imagine you have yet to fully recover. Ru Feng sect has specially prepared 20 soul-nourishing pearls of the highest quality for you to thank you on behalf of the entire cultivation realm. So please do accept. Nanggong Liu. Chuaning finally looked at him, but the way he addressed him had changed as well. He released the silk curtain and turned, his straight-backed, slender silhouette bleeding into the light streaming in from the window. His eyes were ablaze, his brows frigid, and his gaze terribly threatening. Do not place me on a pedestal. How can Ru Feng sect speak on behalf of all the cultivators in the world? Quite some nerve you have. The corners of Nanggong Liu's mouth twitched, though he managed to keep his smile in place. At length he said, still smiling, There's no need to be like this. Yong knew there was a bad blood between Chuaning and Nanggong Liu. In fact, this was something known to the whole of the cultivation world. When Chuaning was 15, Nanggong Liu had invited him into the sect as a guest master, provided the utmost hospitality, and treated him like a god. 15? Damn! As a guest lecturer, basically, at 15, that is freaking impressive. Am I just easily impressed? I feel like that's impressive. Like peacock father, like peacock son. This is so cringeworthy. The peacock feathers be feathering lol. Guys, your comments are the best. Oh my goodness. Okay. Nevertheless, after only a few years, Chuaning had suddenly had a very public falling out with Nanggong Liu right in the middle of Ru Feng's grand hall. The two had exchanged words, saying things like Jinqing Lake, holy weapon, the lake monster's demand, morality and justice, ill for a long time, the madam, etc. Interesting. All who witnessed the argument were left at a loss. What they did know was that at the end of it, an enraged Chuaning had slammed his hands onto the table as he got up to leave. He had a stipend of tens of thousands of gold and received thousands of spiritual stones and talismans every month, but he refused to take so much as a single copper piece. He stood in the hall, right in front of everybody, and took off the Chen pouch tied at his waist, returning all those riches. Then, glowering and speaking not a single word, he removed the fine jade hairpiece Nangong Liu had given him to welcome him as a guest master, letting his hair fall, and returned the headpiece to the reception official. Okay, that's a lot. I have a theory. I don't think it's right, but I have a theory. This was a tale many of the storytellers of the lower cultivation realm told with relish. Nangong Liu was greatly upset, yet even then he tried to smooth things over. He said to Chu Gongzi, "You've served the sect for so long. Even if you must leave, at least let us compensate you properly. Ru Feng sect has no wish to be known as a sect that doesn't pay its dues." But Chu Gongzi replied, "I have served the sect all these years solely to repay the madam's kindness of a meal. With her death, the esteemed sect and I have come to a crossroads. We have chosen different paths, and I have no intention of staying any longer. Keep your money. It would shame me to take it." Then he closed his eyes and turned to take his leave of Ru Feng sect. Shizun had thought the storytellers were exaggerating, so he had once asked Chuaning what exactly Ru Feng sect had done to offend him. However, Chuaning did not like speaking about others behind their backs, so he'd only shaken his head and refused to give any details. But if the scene unfolding before them was any indication, it would appear the storytellers had uttered not a word of a lie. Seeing how tense the situation had become, Madame Wang stepped forward to make peace. She said gently, "Yu Heng elder, please calm yourself. It's not good for your health." She then turned and bowed respectfully to Nangong Liu. "Nangong Xianjun, we appreciate your kind gesture, but Surgeon Peak does not lack for spiritual stones and valuable medicines. We cannot accept your soul-nourishing pills." Nangong Liu seized the chance to disengage, and after a beat, chuckled and said, "Madam is right. I was thoughtless. Young elder, forgive me. Please don't take it to heart." Moran watched all this and thought, Shizun totally flung cold water in this guy's face, and there's a typo, and still he smiles so easily. Amazing. He took a sip of his Rijal green tea. Yet, who would have thought? In the brief moment he looked down to sip his tea, Nangong Liu had come before him, bearing a wide grin. Oh, I can't wait to hear all the, empty flattery he has for him next. Okay. I saw the title and now I'm excited, but anyway. So, theory here, tiny theory. I'm wondering if there was maybe something to the extent of Chuaning going to Jinqing Lake and being like, "Okay, I'm going to go pick myself a holy weapon. I can bring you one as not like a show of good faith, but as a kindness, as a token of appreciation, something like that." And then while he was at Jinqing Lake, he acquired his 3 holy weapons and made some kind of promise to never let them go into any hands that wasn't his, or any hands that he could not trust with full integrity or something like that. And then he had to renege on his own promise to Nangong Liu because it conflicted with his promise and his values and all that. But yeah, like that doesn't feel very likely. But it would kind of add a little bit of plausibility potentially to Nangong Liu being the fake Guchen. I'm not sure. Like, I'm suspecting everyone at this point just to be safe, I feel. Okay. Let us keep going. Chapter 154. Shizun, I'm off to look for Ye Wangxi. I'm so excited. Yeah, no, I'm so suspicious. Oh my goodness. And then probably I'm gonna not be suspicious of the one person I should have been suspicious of. Well, now this was awkward. Everyone else, from Madame Wang to Shu Meng and even Shu Zhengyong, had politely stood in greeting when Nangong Liu came in. Chuaning hadn't cared to do so, but he'd remained standing where he was by the window. But to Moran, Ru Feng sect was no more than some worthless garbage sect he had trodden underfoot in his previous life. Oh no, Moran. You're a representative of Session Peak at the moment. He knew the place was a disordered mess beneath the surface, glamour hardly worthy of respect. Still, he hadn't meant to make things awkward for Nangong Liu. It just never occurred to him to stand. He's hopeless. It was quite the strange scene. Nangong Liu, the host and elders, stood with an amicable smile, face not at all angry, but full of warmth and familiarity. Moran, the guest and junior, reclined languidly in the tashi chair with his legs crossed and a piping hot cup of tea in hand. Zhu Zhengyong hadn't paid any attention to what Moran was doing, but as he turned to look now, he couldn't help his mortification. This boy really had no manners. Oh no. Oh my word. And you must be the famed Mo Zongshi that everyone talks of these last few years. Setting the lid back on his teacup, Moran lifted his eyes and replied, "That's me." Such gallant, I'm betting he wanted to say youth. Nangung Xianjun. Moran cut him off with a smile. "You've already used gallant youth on my cousin, so perhaps not on me as well." No. Like, this is so funny, but I'm just feeling so much secondhand embarrassment for poor Madame Wang and Xu Zhengyong. He spoke courteously, with an easy tone and a warm smile, but the words were anything but. Nor did he bother to stand. In fact, after casually saying those words, he lifted the teacup once again, scraping the celadon lid against its rim, and blew at the gently rising steam. Lowering his gaze along with those long, dense eyelashes, he returned to leisurely sip his tea. He was young, handsome, tall, and poised. His attitude and mannerisms gave the impression that he was the true master of Ru Feng sect, the one who stood at the apex of the entire cultivation realm, while Nangong Liu was no more than a dog perched by a seat down. Huh. Wu Zongshi is quite right. This humble one simply couldn't think of a better phrase due to my own ineloquence, so that can't be right. Moran put down his teacup and looked up with a faint smile. Nankon Shinjin has had no end of praise to dole out since entering the room. If you aren't a smooth talker, who out there is? 哎呀，莫总是 flatters me too much. Who said I was flattering you? Moran smiled, bright eyes fired sorry, not fire fixed on him, but sorry, I'm floored by the way that Moran has no chill. He just has absolutely zero chill. Moran, your attempt to flatter is noted and denied. Yes. Oh my word. Okay, let's try and keep a straight face here. Being a smooth talker isn't always a good thing. Yong finally couldn't take it anymore. Lowering his voice, he scolded, "Renar." It was understandable for Chuaning to be hostile towards Nangonglio. At least there was a history between them, and Chuaning had the social status to rival him. Moran, on the other hand, Moran paid Yong no mind, speaking instead to Nangonglio. Nangong Qianjun should save the honeyed words for the other juniors. I'm a crude person. I won't understand it, and I don't want to hear it. Shizun was completely speechless. Although Moran knew his uncle would be displeased with his behavior, he didn't regret it in the least. The world was filled with so many vile things. Chuaning, with his fierce temper, was always sticking his neck out. Take for example the exorcism of Lu Xianxian when he'd beaten up landlord Chen. The paying client for mistreating a helpless girl, heedless of any damage to his reputation. He'd done nothing wrong, yet his name was ever maligned in the mouths of others. Those people would call him cold-blooded, intractable, and unfeeling. Moran was determined to stop others from calling her Shizun ill-mannered ever again. Thus he vowed to act even more egregiously than Chuaning did, even more over the top. It was a dumb plan. It is a very Moran plan, though. But it was the only one he could conceive of to protect his Shizun. While the other three in the room accepted Nangonglio's flattery and favour out of politeness and decorum, Moran did not. Nor was this determination a spur-of-the-moment decision. Since the day he learned that it had been Chuaning who had carried him from that bloody battlefield on his back, crawling when he could no longer walk, ever since he'd laid eyes on that human soul in that bowl of wontons in Ningpo Hall, ever since he'd travelled to the depths of the underworld to bring Chuaning back, Moran had vowed to stand with Chuaning for as long as Chuaning would have him. Nangonglio had run into 2 walls in a row. Any other sect leader would have flipped his lid and kicked them all back onto the streets, but Nangonglio did no such thing. He acted as if it had never happened, cheerfully chatting with Yong until Yong couldn't take the embarrassments and pulled him aside to quietly apologize for not getting his nephew in line. I mean, I feel for Yong, to be honest. More like it's not a flattery, it's an insult, 100%. Nangonglio laughed it off. It's expected for a youngster to be bold. I think it's a wonderful thing that Mo Zongshi is so forthright. I didn't believe a single word out of your mouth. After a meeting, sorry, that was me, that wasn't any of the characters. After the meeting with Nangonglio, Ru Feng sect disciples led the party to the courtyard, where they would stay for the duration of the wedding. Moran sneezed the whole way there. Shimeng turned to look at him. Maybe sect leader Nangong laid a curse on you for all that mouthing off just now. Shut it, it's more like you got cursed. Moran's eyes were watery. I can't handle such strong incense. The room back there. Ugh. The incense was really too unpleasant. Jun. He's like trying to hold back a sneeze and I'm struggling to emulate it. Chuaning furrowed his brow and disdainfully passed him a handkerchief. How unsightly. Wipe your face. A teary-eyed Moran accepted the high-tongue embroidered handkerchief with a grin. Shizun is so kind to me. Thank you, Shizun. Chuaning was a little flustered. Who's kind to you? That's right, Shumeng piped up, unwilling to be second. Who's kind to you? I am clearly the one Shizun is kindest to. Moran taunted him. Aren't you a little too old to be making a contest of that? He turned quite serious and held up the handkerchief. See this? Shizun said he'd make me one just like it. Do you have one? Guys, he loves all of you, just not the same way. Mortified, Chuaning snatched the handkerchief back with a lightning speed as he snapped, More way here. Shimeng momentarily froze in shock, not sock. The rage. Yeah, right. As if anyone's gonna believe Shizun would make you a handkerchief. Keep dreaming. Shameless. Oh no, now Chuaning might not do it just out of sheer embarrassment. The chatting and bickering, thus chattering and bickering, they arrived at the lodgings Nangong Liu had arranged for them. There were 4 rooms around the courtyard, one for Shu Yong and Madame Wang, and one for each of the rest. Flowers danced gently between winding paths to quiet retreats, and the soothing sounds of running water babbled in the background. It was a scene of singular elegance. Moran, who had been in good spirits, faltered when he saw which courtyard they would be staying in. Yeah, I was kind of like, I don't know if his mind also jumped to that, but it kind of reminded me of the courtyard when they were in, not Butterfly Town, the Feather People's place, you know, when they were training and they were, like, Yewongshi was staying opposite them. I can't remember what the place was called. Um, his eyes glazed over for a moment, despite himself, as he followed the rest into the courtyard. His mood grew grimmer as he took in the details of their surroundings. This was the one place in Ru Feng sect that had left a deep impression on him in his previous life. Being back here made him think about other possibilities. If Chuaning had not recalled him from that path at the cost of his own life, perhaps he would have walked the same road in this lifetime and become Emperor Taishenjin. Even now, he would be commanding millions of Genlong chess pieces and burning the renowned sect to the ground. The thought sent streams of cold sweat down his back, and 1,000 thoughts rushed through his mind. Rand closed his eyes. He was no longer the youth who wore his heart on his sleeve. He could keep his emotions in check, and so it was that no one noticed the haze clouding his heart. Each retired to their own room to rest. Moran stood in front of his for a while, hands clasped behind his back, but did not go inside. One of the maids in the courtyard, a little uneasy, asked carefully, Does Shinju not find the room satisfactory? Oh no. Coming back to himself, Moran smiled. This courtyard just reminded me of somewhere I used to live, is all. What a coincidence. I was worried Shinjun didn't find the accommodations to his taste. If Shinjun has any requests, please let me know and I will do my best to fulfill it. I'm good, thank you, Moran replied with a smile. He looked up at the 100-year-old osmosis tree in the yard, its trunk so thick he could barely wrap his arms around it. The dancing shade of its foliage swept across his vision like ghosts from his past. His eyelashes quivered minutely, and melancholy flooded his chest. He spun around and called out to the maid, who was leaving. Wait. Yes, Shinjun? Moran hesitated. I wanted to ask about someone. He paused, and when he lifted his eyes, his gaze was torch-bright. Do you know of a... Actually, never mind. Let me ask about someone else instead. Make up your mind, Moran. Do you know where I can find Ye Wangxi? Ye Gongzi is Elder Shu's direct disciple, the maid answered. He lives with him in the same courtyard. Shenjun can find Ye Gongzi there. Oh! I didn't actually expect him to still be in Ru Feng sect. Moran secretly let out a breath he'd been holding. The last time he'd seen Ye Wangxi had been at the restaurant, where Ye Wangxi had begged Nang Gongsi to go back with him, and Nang Gongsi had refused. Back then, Ye Wangxi had said, "If it's my presence back home that's unsettling you, then I'll take my leave, and you'll never have to see me again." To be honest, Moran had been worried about Ye Wangxi. He felt that the man had suffered enough in his previous lifetime. To Moran's mind, Ye Wangxi was not unlike Chu Wanning. Both were people of morals and conviction. The one was reserved while the other was fiery. Yet neither met a good end. He regretted the past and had hoped Ye Wangxi would be better off in this lifetime. I do too. He was relieved to hear that Nang Gongsi hadn't been so heartless as to chase Ye Wangxi off in truth. Yeah, I kind of weirdly feared that as well. Elder Shu's courtyard was called Farewell to Three Lifetimes. The name supposedly taken from the phrase, "One sip of Ningpo soup bids farewell to 3 lifetimes of memories." It meant that life was fleeting, and that it was best to forget that which ought to be forgotten, instead of wallowing. Yeah, because isn't that like the goddess of the underworld? Well, not the underworld, I'm using Greek mythology here, but like the goddess who gives you the river water to erase your memories. Am I making up nonsense? Maybe, probably. All would be forgotten in death by the time one got to READALONG Bridge anyway. How pessimistic. No wonder Ye Wangxi had turned out so repressed you couldn't beat a fart out of him. What a clever parrot, how interesting. Now recite this one. 1 bowl of rice, 1 scoop of water, in a humble alley. A guard had gone ahead to announce Moran's visit and his intentions. Moran had scarcely stepped around the partition wall when he heard the languid, teasing voice of a man from within. He took a few more steps and saw the speaker standing in the sun-drenched courtyard. He looked to be in his early 30s and was dressed in a robe so humble it sported a few patches at the corners of its sleeves. Despite the chill, he wore no shoes but stood barefoot on the cold stone pavement with a handful of sunflower seeds, teasing a snow-white parrot with blue eyes and a long tail. The parrot flapped its wings as it rocked side to side on its perch. It seemed pleased with itself as it sang loudly back, "Ah, 1 bowl of rice, 1 scoop of water in a humble alley." Not bad, not bad. You're smart then, little Yeze. You know, he wasn't nearly this clever when he was young. He couldn't memorize this bit no matter how he tried. The man fed the parrot some seeds. "Here, treats from Daddy." Oh my goodness, okay. Who is this? Is it Ye Wangxi? I can't imagine it being Ye Wangxi because they're not, like, it's been 5 years, it hasn't been, like, 10 or 20. Moran stared, speechless. Calling himself a bird's daddy. Did this make him a bird brain then? Okay. When the man turned and saw Moran beside the partition wall, he cracked the sunflower seeds between his teeth and spit the shell. Then he suddenly beamed. It was a bright smile, yet hints of something disquiet lurked beneath. Under the radiant sunlight, he projected an air of breezy nonchalance. "Mo Zongshi. Moran, yes?" He smiled. "Pleased to meet you." Moran returned the smile. "Same here." The pleasantries duly exchanged, Moran took a closer look at the man's face. He looked vaguely familiar, as if Moran had seen him before, during his slaughter of Ru Feng sect in the past life. Was he Yifu, you're running around without shoes again. Okay. A familiar voice rang out, a remark of such little import, but one that was thunderous to Moran's ears. Moran whipped his head around to find Yong striding in through the moon gate, tall and slender as ever, with a gentle expression softening his features. He walked straight over, holding a pair of yellow satin shoes, which he set down at the man's feet. Yifu? Yongxi's foster father? Through the thrumming of blood in his ears, Moran could hear the cries and screams from a lifetime past, the clanging of swords against the clanging of sword against sword, the thunder of battle drums. Yifu! A face marred in bloodstains burst through his memories. Yongxi crying and screaming, voices splitting the heavens. Oh, I'm so glad I don't have to have seen that scene. Had raised Ru Feng sect, Nanggong Liu had fled to save his own hide, leaving the 72 cities headless and floundering. Elder Xue, Ru Feng sect's foremost warden, had stepped up to take the reins, marshalling the panicked masses that Moran would have otherwise wiped out in an instant, in resistance with the aid of Yongxi. The man wasn't even a Nanggong, yet he'd shouldered the responsibilities that should have fallen on the sect leader of that surname, and used his position as the elder of Ru Feng sect to defend its 72 cities to the last. Nah, I'm already sad just thinking about that, but before we move on, I just want to show you guys the beautiful illustration that this came with. Like, look at it. Is it not stunning? I think that this, I don't know, this just hits in a very raw way. Anyway, okay. We are almost done, I think. Let's see. Yeah. We have about 5 pages left. 5 or 6. Okay. He wasn't even Yongxi's father by blood, yet he'd moved to intercept the sharp blade filled with spiritual power aimed at Yongxi's back, sacrificing his own body to protect the child he raised. Ran had watched the scene from atop the city walls, and his lips had twisted in a sneer. Heavens only knew how jealous he'd been in that moment. To think there was someone out there who would willingly die for another without a blood tie. His narrow-minded self had felt shock and pain. He was so jealous he'd almost gone mad, so jealous his eyes had gone bloodshot. He thought, great, that's just great. Look how lucky Yongxi is. Had there been a single person in this vast world, other than his mother, who'd been willing to die for him, would he have ended up like this? Well, now, that's a painful parallel to what ended up happening in the reborn life. Because someone did die for him, and that changed the entire trajectory of everything. Oh my goodness, Moran, a normal bodily reaction of a sneeze, Chuaning gross right in front of his salad. Oh goodness, yes, basically exactly that. The heavens were kind to everyone else. It was only to him that they were so grudging, so cruel. He'd wanted to destroy everyone he was jealous of. All the people huddled together for warmth. He was going to send every last one of them to hell. How was it fair that he was the only person to never experience a single day of contentment or a single spark of warmth? That the only person who had ever been kind to him had died long ago. It was the only bit of warmth he'd ever had. Why did it have to be taken from him? He hated. It's so sad how you can see that the singular belief of Moran's clouded his judgment so much that it literally ruined his life. Like, it's actually really tragic. I'm not saying it makes anything that he did okay, but it is tragic. Looking back, Moran could only think of how stupid he'd been back then. There was someone in this world who would be willing to die for him. He was the one who had missed it, who hadn't realized, and who had let the person down. Moran closed his eyes and took a moment to settle his turbulent emotions before looking up again. He knew who this man was now. This was Yong Shizun, as well as Yifu Shushwang Lin. The man who, on the second day of the slaughter of Ru Feng's sect, had died in the battle to save Yong Shi. Moran turned away, a bitter ache in his heart. He couldn't bear to look at that smiling, carefree person, bathed in sunlight any longer. He went over to greet Yong Shi instead. Yong Shi paused when he noticed Moran standing a short distance away. Then he smiled and said, "Ah, Mo Shong is here too. Long time no see. Long time no see." In this lifetime, Yong Shi had only met Moran a handful of times and wasn't terribly familiar with him. He continued to smile politely as he asked, "Are you here for my Yifu?" Moran silently glanced over at Shuanglin before shaking his head a little awkward. "No, I'm here to see you." "Well, look at that, little Yizi. When was the last time someone came here looking for you?" Grinning lazily, Shu Shuanglin, I'm struggling with that, popped another sunflower seed into his mouth. "Where did you meet Mo Zongshi anyway?" "At Peach Blossom Springs." "Oh right, that was the place." That's nice, Shuanglin said, smiling as he poured the rest of the sunflower seeds into the bird's food bowl. "You young ones keep chatting. I'm going to go take a walk around." Yong Shi tugged at him. "Yifu, you aren't wearing your shoes again." "Oh, I forgot." This feels weirdly slightly similar. Was it anime or was it Stars of Chaos? I can't remember. It's gonna bother me. Anyway, okay, let's move on. Oh, I forgot. Still smiling, Shuanglin slipped the shoes on. There. Better? But out of the corner of his eye, Moran saw the man stroll leisurely around the corner, bend down, take the shoes off again, and tuck them into the front of his robe before continuing on his merry way. This father-son pair, in terms of both appearance and personality, was really very strange. Shuanglin looked very young on account of his cultivation method, not a day past 30. He seemed more like Yong Shi's brother than anything else. In fact, with his willful mischief temperament, he seemed more like a younger brother. What was with that plaque outside, solemnly inscribed with "Farewell to 3 lifetimes," then? Was he just messing around, or what? Side by side, Yong Shi and Moran walked unhurriedly along the shaded path. Sorry. Let me just... So close to the end and now my voice is just not having it, really. The courtyard was full of trees that flowered and bore fruit, but it was now the middle of winter and everything was withered. Only a few dry yellow leaves clung to the branches, quivering in the wake of the passing wind. Sorry about what happened at the restaurant last time. It was quite embarrassing. Not at all, Moran said. How have you been lately? He regretted the words as soon as they left his mouth. Yewangshi wasn't the type to say anything, even if he was miserable. Sure enough, he smiled a small smile and said, I'm all right. And you? Pretty good. The two went close. Moran had only sought him out because he remembered the sins of his past life, felt remorseful, and wanted to see for himself how the still living Yewangshi fared. But now that he was alone with him, he really didn't know what to talk about. Moran knew many of Yewangshi's secrets, none of which were appropriate topics of discussion. He found himself with nothing to say. The two strolled in silence for a time. Yewangshi asked, How's Shasini doing? Oh, this is going to be interesting. Moran was caught by surprise for a moment, then chuckled. You still remember the name? Impressive. His name is rather memorable. Huh, I suppose. Shasini is here too. You can see him later. Yewangshi seemed bewildered. He's here too? But I didn't think the sect leader would have invited. You don't know who Shasini really is yet, do you? Moran said with a laugh. Let me tell you then. It's a long story. So it was that he recounted the chain of events that led to Chuaning becoming Shasini. Yewangshi looked pensive for a while, then sighed. Mo Gongzi is very fortunate to have him as your master, and Ru Feng sect is very fortunate to count Ye Gongzi among its disciples. Yewangshi, a little embarrassed, replied with another small smile. Mo Gongzi is too kind. They arrived at a small, red-painted pontoon bridge. The path here had been all dry branches and shriveled leaves, but this place was verdant, with tall stalks of bamboo that stood proud and unyielding in the wind and snow. The waters of Ru Feng sect had been infused with spiritual power to prevent freezing, and the foot of the bridge was awash with the sweet tinkling of running water. Embraced by twin groves of lush green. I'm just waiting for whatever shoe is about to drop here on the final page of this volume. When Moran turned, he saw Yewangshi with eyes downcast, his gaze fixed on the sparkling stream and its reflected light dancing across his dark pupils. He was the same person, but the new weariness on his face was hard to miss. Nangong's marriage was indeed too cruel to Yewangshi. Moran suddenly found it hard to stomach. He felt as if he were looking at Chuaning, who gave so much of himself yet hardly received as much as a backward glance. Ye Gongzi, why didn't you come to Shizun Peak instead? Moran asked. What? Moran shut his mouth. The words had felt overly impetuous the instant they passed his lips, and he well knew what Yewangshi's answer would be. He sighed and said, It was just an offhand remark, don't mind me. Yewangshi smiled in response. He had used to have a handsome, alluring smile, 7 parts gallantry and 3 parts elegance. Here was still the same person, with the same smile, but his cheeks were now sunken, and though the gallantry remained, the elegance had withered, leaving twin pools of sorrow. It was obvious that he had tried to hide it, but despite his best efforts, the sorrow was too deep to be concealed. Is Moshong here to poach people for Shizun Peak? Yewangshi quipped. Huh, sure am. Though Ye Gongzi probably won't bite, so just take it as a joke. My Yifu is here, so I'm not leaving. What do you plan to do then? Pain flashed across Yewangshi's face, and for once he didn't have a ready answer. What did he plan to do? He didn't know that either. Yewangshi felt he was a moth to Nangong's flame. This sounds like he is in love with Nangongzi, and if that's not what's up, I'm gonna have to have a talk with Meat Bun. Theoretically. He couldn't help being drawn to that warmth, even if it led to his own ruin. I don't want to read this bit, but Nang Gongse didn't want him. Dying, and I'm not here for it. I'll just stay here at Ru Feng sect, keep doing the things that are my duty, Yong said with a wan smile. Serve the sect leader, serve Yifu, and later serve the young master. He paused and his hands tightened into fists, the joints as pale as jade. Moran was perturbed. How could Yongxi say the rest of that sentence so calmly? How could he say the next words at all? And serve the young mistress. Yay, we love that. Yongxi finally dropped his gaze as if unable to hear it any longer, but only for an instant. Then he raised his eyes, looking at Moran in that gentle, polite way of his. He even managed to keep a smile on his face as he stood in the bitter cold of winter, resilient as the bamboo all around. A sudden gust sent the fresh fallen snow scattering in the bamboo groves. In that moment, Moran decided, no, Yang Gongse was not going to marry Song Chusong. Yes! 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 Yes, 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 yes. Sorry, I hope I didn't damage anyone's ears with that. Just yes, I'm here for a wedding intervention, wedding crashing, gate crashing, no that's not, whatever that crashing thing is, I'm here for it. Yes, yes, I was not thinking that's where this was going, but I'm so happy that Moran is playing matchmaker, because for once I actually think he's up to the right path here. I think he's actually seeing the forest for the trees. I'm using a lot of expressions that I feel I'm not using correctly. Anyway, that is the end of volume 4, and that was glorious. So, putting all of my excitement aside, for anyone who maybe wasn't here on Tuesday, I have volume 5 here ready to go, but because I'm still like kind of recovering, I just want to give myself 1 week of grace between volume 4 and volume 5. So we're not jumping into volume 5 next week, we're not doing any read-alongs next week, and then the week after we're going straight into volume 5. I'm very excited about it. Unfortunately, volume 5 is about 100 pages shorter than volume 4, so that, like, less story for us, but it's fine, at least we don't have to wait too long between these 2 volumes. We're just gonna have to, unfortunately, wait a little bit for volume 6 after this, because I think it's only coming out late August, if I'm not mistaken, so we'll only be doing that one, I think, in September. But yeah, that is something to worry about then. Time to crash the wedding. There we go. That is the proper way to word it. Thank you. This is what I don't like about Seven Seas. Not sure if it's the same in Chinese, but the books vary so much in size and yet are at the same price. Yeah, it is very difficult. I get that they try and have good stopping points, because as far as I found out, I can't remember who mentioned it to me, it might have been Couscous. Someone mentioned that technically volume 2, as far as the original Chinese novels, were volume 1 ended with all the like this venerable one chapters, and then volume 2 started with Shizun, all the ones that had like Shizun in the title, in the chapter titles. So I kind of wish they'd stuck to that, like to the natural designated arcs. I understand that would have been very thick volumes, but still, at the same time, at least we're getting quality for this, I guess. Like, I'm just very happy that I have an excuse to buy these for the channel, because I would have, like, I would have still justified it somehow, but it's a lot easier to justify it when it's for YouTube. Anyway, okay. I'm very mad about volume 5 being shorter chapters. I thought we're gonna be, there are gonna be in volume 6. In mainland China, there are essentially, but the different editions have a lot of different ways to separate the novel. Okay, that makes sense. I just don't understand how they're gonna fit the rest of the story in 6 more volumes if they keep thinning them like this. I don't know if they are gonna keep thinning it. I feel like potentially, at least we know there's only gonna be 11. I don't think they'll extend it. But I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they're thinning it out and then bulking them back up as we get closer to the climax and things like that. I think they're trying very hard to make it feel like there's complete arcs within each book, and I think they're doing an okay job of it, but it is very difficult with something that wasn't originally intended to be separated from being one story. Anyway, okay, let me see. I think that's all of it. I do love the artwork though, yes, and I finally discovered the artist's Twitter, so now I have access to the full artwork, like this, where you can actually see the full one without any of the back cover being obscured. And that artist is amazing. I'm so glad that they are using them for Remnants of Filth as well, which is another one we're gonna read at some point. I'm just not sure when, and I do have the first volume of Case File Compendium as well. Okay, but I'm gonna end it here for today. I hope you guys enjoyed, and thank you guys so much for joining me. This was by far my favorite volume, not just because we kind of finally got inklings of Moran and Chuaning being in love with each other, but also because it was overall a pretty happy volume, which you can't say about most of ErHa. So anyway, again, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you the week after next week for volume 5. I'm so excited. 再见。